Good morning, everyone. This is Ken Bailey. I have for many, many years, on a hobby basis, been a creator of comic books. The current series, The Mighty EnergyGirl, is currently 40 books strong, and I'm working on book number 41. I would like to introduce you to one of my associates today. This is issue number 40 you're looking at. The title is Cat's Meow, and it is a collaboration with a sharing of characters both directions between myself, as I said, the creator of this lady, the Mighty EnergyGirl, and I don't want to say elderly, a veteran superwoman, and two trainees. I'd like you to meet Mari, and her close associate, Zondra Niko. Zondra can turn into a cat. More on that later. This book brings those two characters into my universe, and the first 10 pages, an introduction, takes one of my characters, Government Agent Mary Oldsmobile, and sends her first into the world of my collaborator, who wrote and drew the first 10 pages, and then it segues into returning to my universe with me doing the artwork and the writing, and some of my collaborators' characters come along. Meet the very fatherly General Joe Carralles. And there are more. Before we go on, I want to also add, I'd like you to meet the two other people who are working with me on this crossover. That's me. That picture would go well on a driver's license. And this is Joe Ellie Carralles III. Joe is also a cartoonist, an author, a writer, and the creator of the series formerly known as Mary Selinsky and the Wonder Kitty, known today as the Improbable Girl and the Wonder Kitty. He is the one who is sharing characters and universes with me for these two stories, Cat's Meow and its sequel, Cat to the Future, that hover between our two universes. I believe in his universe the two stories are part of his third story arc, and as I said, they are books number 40 and 41 on my side. I also would like to mention a third man. This is a friend of mine, and his name is David Martini. Of late, he has been for many years with his wife a retailer and an online businessman in the area of model trains mainly, but also old toys and other things. He is semi-retired now. He also has a military past and is just a wealth of knowledge on everything, both within his areas of military expertise and also on 1940s, 50s, and 60s American pop culture. So he has been tech advisor and has helped write the script with me for these two stories. Today's focus, though, is going to be on this man, Joe Ellie Carralles, and his two young wards, Mary Selinsky and Zondra Niko. So, enough of this book. Who are Mary Selinsky and Zondra Niko? Who is Joe Carralles? Joe Ellie Carralles, lives in southern Texas. He is a school teacher. He has worked with various grades, high school, perhaps college. And over the course of the teaching career, he and some of his students developed an ongoing comic strip where they created these two typical students just out of school trying to make it in the big world. The time came when the decision was made to take this further than the school and try to segue it into internet reading, and that's when Joe discovered and approached me. We now have been working together for 3 years, at least, I believe, and he not only has he made it to both online, but also he has led the way into professional publishing of our two works. He did it first and I followed. So I believe he's up to 5 stories. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And number 6 will be coming out, I believe, in the early summer or late spring. So go Joe. He has the storyline of these 2 young ladies planned all the way through into their elderly years in outline form. So this is just the beginning. Let me introduce you to the world of Joe Ellie Carralles 3 and these 2 young ladies, Mary Selinsky and Zandra Niko. Mary and Zandra are just out of school, like I said. Their lifelong dream is to become world-famous journalists. However, their life takes a turn, as we will discover in a minute, and they end up as superheroes. Not their first choice, and the powers come before even the knowledge of what to do with them comes. But here the story starts with a peek into the future, where they have just wrapped up these 2 sinister-looking people. More on them later. And then it goes back to what is the origin? Well, largely, Marie and Zandra, who most people just call Niko, her last name, are trying to get into a newspaper in the town of Kingsville, I believe, Texas. And they have a couple friends in the industry that are kind of supporting them as benefactors, and they have several people in the industry who are not, and would just as soon get these 2 upstarts out of their business. We see how right after graduating from their education, there is a long line of trying to make it by starting kind of at the entry level. They work in fast food, they work at the chain store, they work at other places. Something always goes amiss, and every single one of these avenues ends with 2 words. You're fired! But then at last, they run into this woman who is one of the people of influence at this newspaper, and she arranges for them to get in. And in they go. Unfortunately, as I said, there are some that support her, and there are some, particularly this person right here, Peggy O'Shea, who are extremely offended and do not. Peggy was the newspaper star of yesteryear, and she's aging, and her star is fading, and she kind of, I think, senses that Marie and Zandra will eventually become the people they want to be, and she will be on her way out into retirement, and she's not happy. Well, this is where this would make a fine storyline in itself, but now something happens. As the girls struggle to find their way in the newsroom, which is in the mailroom, which is the only place for them in the newspaper at this point, out in the bigger world, something is up. Military forces are scrambling. Aircraft carriers are on the move. Jets have been scrambled. A UFO has appeared in the sky. Now, this was created a number of years back. I know all this stuff is in the news right now and very pertinent, but this was not drawn as a result of that, but before that. Meanwhile, at one of the NORAD-like underground bases, they're tracking the incoming thing on radar. The story is set in 2011, so like some of the mainline comic books, whenever the year is, if the President of the United States appears, it's whoever was president at that time. I believe you know this man. As the emergency is handled, we see this man, General Joe Carralles, is the head of the Wrangler Squadron, one of the Air Force subunits responding. The UFO tries to evade and ends up in the city park in the little Texas town where Zandra and Niko live. Now, if you are 2 young people and there's no way to get to the top and you're stuck in the mailroom and you hear there's this amazing thing, because you're young, you don't know, you can't get there, you can't get through the security, you can't do anything, and so you go, you find a way to get through the security, And pretty soon they confront the spacecraft. Well, long story short, what happens next? They meet this fellow, an alien. I mean a real alien from far, far away. What they don't know is this alien, who they name Steve because his name is unpronounceable, is actually a teenager himself, and he's on a science project. And instead of doing the studying he needed, he thought he would just kind of borrow his dad's interplanetary spaceship and go directly to the place he was studying, which is, guess what? Well, it was supposed to be Venus, but instead he ended up on Earth. So as long as he's here, surrounded by the military, and he can't go anywhere, he takes these two gals into his spacecraft, firstly as prisoners and hostages, but when they find out he really doesn't know what to do because he's just a kid, they offer to help him find a way off the planet. And as they're talking about it and teaching him something about Earth culture, he responds to their kindness by giving them, guess what? Superpowers, because there is a convenient superpower booth, though it's called something else in alien language. And first, Niko gets the zap, and then it is Marie's turn. Now, what are the superpowers? He's not saying, because, see, this is his dad's spacecraft, and he's really not supposed to be monkeying with it anyway, with creatures from another planet, and so he just set the dials, and Zandra turns into a cat. Well, that what else can they do? They don't know. He's not sure. But unfortunately, by then, the military has moved in, and when word gets out that he has abducted two human just out of school people, the army opens fire. And the shots fly, and the alien takes off, and he seems to be hit, and the ship tumbles out of sight. And Zandra and Niko, who were released just before he took off, think that Steve has been destroyed with his ship, and they are now alone. And of course, the military moves in and arrests them both. And you have these two generals. The one on the left is General Morelli. The one on the right is General Carralles. Carralles is like a father figure. He knows that there are those in the military who would see the two girls as just a chance to further their own careers or turn them into some kind of weapon. So he is very protective, and he tries to get them under his jurisdiction so he can keep an eye on them and protect them. General Morelli is more on the ambitious type. He outranks General Carralles, and he tries to pull strings to get the girls under his control, supposedly for their own good, but in reality he has dun-dun-dun nefarious plans. So as these two men battle for control, the girls are put into the Civil Air Patrol wing, and they spend their weekends or whenever they are called at the Air Force Base, and the rest of the time they are back at the newspaper trying to find their way there. Well, that is the first story. That's all we have time to talk about today, but needless to say, in the second issue, there is a mission overseas they accidentally get sucked into with this evil Duke. Dun, dun, dun. And it's based on a popular movie from many years ago, and also on another famous tale that is now a video game. This time it's Marie's turn to get sucked into foreign intrigue when she happens to resemble the Queen of Ruritania, who is just about to be crowned because the old queen or king is gone. The evil Duke wants to do a switcheroo. Well, in the third, that is called The Prisoner's Agenda, by the way. In the third story, called The Heist, having survived the evil Duke and come out victorious, they are now accused of a crime they did not commit, involving a Smithsonian-like institute and an artifact that appears to have dun-dun-dun strange powers. The heist ends up going over 3 books because it gets more and more complicated, and in it, as we meet some new characters, we find a future love interest for this little lady here, though like many future love interests, initially the two do not like each other much, and eventually one is coming for the other one. But that is in the future. Somewhere between this book and the one that is coming out this coming summer, my two books fall into place. And again, this is Cat's Meow, as General Carralles is now finding out that even though he needs to train these two girls, the Air Force and the Civil Air Patrol do not have resources to train two young superheroines or heroes that don't even know for sure what their powers are yet. Still trying to keep them away from the scheming General Morelli, Carralles contacts the Federal Department of Superhumanics, and they send Mary Oldsmobile, who works with Carralles and meets the girls and gets them set up with guess who? The Mighty EnergyGirl of Fairview, Illinois will now be their trainer. Things go, of course, off the tracks, but that's... You'll have to buy the book to read that story. And then here's the cover for the sequel, Cat to the Future, which is currently, I'm creating it. We are on page 26. It will be roughly 35 or 40 pages. If you like time travel and antique aircraft and secrets of seemingly innocent, defunct facilities that really are not so much, and you want to meet some people from the 1940s, not only military people, but a certain famous superheroine from the 1940s that became an international ethics case down to the present day, you need to get your order in for this book when it becomes available. Meantime, we will continue to follow the adventures of Marie and Niko as they are back in their own universe. My hat is off to my friend Joe Carralles, who created them and shared them with me. And you will also, I hope, in these two books, appreciate the attention given to military and period time, civilian and military details. My hat there is off to my ever-faithful technical advisor, David Martini. Again, my name's Ken Bailey. My main character, the Mighty EnergyGirl, has a number of other adventures. At least 4 of them are now available, professionally published, at CWS Bookstore, and that's the bookstore wing of Comics Wellspring. You can find them online. And also when I appear locally and at least one of the local stores here in my hometown of Sheboygan, Wisconsin. If any of you out there are aspiring cartoonists, I hope this gives you encouragement to hang in there and keep going, because the more you create your universe, it starts to grow by itself, and you never know what connections you may make. This is Ken Bailey, signing off. Have a good day.